Chapter 2. I trudged up the long driveway, jumping over puddles of muddy rainwater and wondering what Jackie was doing right that very minute. Probably smoking cigarettes with some boy in the parking lot of the Piggly Wiggly across from the high school. Everybody thinks my sister's an angel straight down from heaven, but I know better. When Gus and Bertha's house finally came into view, I stopped. I'd been there 4 days already, but I still couldn't get over how that house hung off the side of the mountain like it did. The front of the house sat smack on the ground with flowering shrubs nestled right up against it, but the back was on stilts, stuck into the steep mountainside. On top of the stilts was a tiny porch with 2 rocking chairs and window boxes full of flowers perched upon the railing. On my first night in Colby, Gus dragged a kitchen chair out there for me after supper. Bertha had asked me about a million questions, like what was my favorite subject in school, and did I have a lucky number? Did I want to go swimming at the Y sometime, and did I like boiled peanuts? But I just mumbled and shrugged till she finally stopped. I was too mad to talk. What was I doing there on that front porch with these people I didn't even know? I felt like I'd been tossed out on the side of the road like a sack of unwanted kittens. So the 3 of us sat there in silence, watching the sun sink behind the mountain, and the lightning bugs twinkle off and on in the pine trees. I'd spent the next 3 days trying to convince Gus and Bertha that it was dumb for me to go to school since it was almost summer. But the next thing I knew, I was sitting on that bus full of hillbilly kids on my way to school. "Hey there," Bertha called from the front door as I made my way across the yard. A fat orange cat darted out from behind the garden shed and trotted along beside me. Gus and Bertha had a whole passel of cats, sleeping under the porch, sunning on the windowsill, swatting bees out in the garden. I went inside and dropped my backpack on Gus's tattered easy chair. The smell of warm cinnamon drifted through the kitchen door. "I made coffee cake," Bertha said. "I wonder why they call it coffee cake. Not a drop of coffee in it." She held the door open for the cat to come in. "Oh, I know. I bet it's 'cause you're supposed to drink coffee when you eat it. You think? Well, anyways, who cares, right?" It had been clear to me from day one that Bertha was a talker. Not like her sister, my mama, who went for days without saying a word. I'd been surprised when I saw how much they looked alike, though. Same mousy brown hair, same long, thin fingers. Even the same crinkly lines along the side of their mouths. I sat at the kitchen table and watched Bertha cut a thick slice of coffee cake and put it on a paper towel in front of me. Then she pulled her chair close to mine and said, "Tell me every little thing about your first day. Your teacher, the other kids, what does your classroom look like? What did you have for lunch? What you did at recess? Every little thing." "Some girl ate a squirrel sandwich," I said. Bertha's eyes shot up. "A squirrel sandwich? Are you sure?" I licked my finger and pressed it onto the paper towel to get the coffee cake crumbs. I nodded, but I didn't look at her and said, "I'm sure." A small gray cat sat on the window kitchen counter, grooming himself. I wondered if it was the one that Howard had given them. Bertha picked him up and kissed him on the top of his head. "Charlie don't want cat hair in her coffee cake, Walter." Then she gently put him down on the linoleum floor. His tail twitched as he watched a line of tiny ants marching from under the sink to a dark spot of something sticky on the stove. "And there's an up-down boy in my class," I said. Bertha cocked her head. "What in the name of sweet Bessie McGee is an up-down boy?" She snapped a brown leaf off a plant in the windowsill and tucked it into her pocket. "This boy named Howard who walks up and down like this." I walked like Howard around the kitchen table. "Howard Odom," Bertha said. "Bless his heart. Good as gold, that boy is. Don't bat an eye when kids poke fun at him, calling him names like Pogo." She shook her head. "I swear, kids can be so mean sometimes." "Pogo?" "Yeah, you know, like a pogo stick." "He ought to punch their lights out." I said, "That's what I'd do." Bertha widened her eyes at me, then shook her head. "Not that boy. He wouldn't hurt a fly. All them Odoms are like that. Kind, good-hearted, kind of wild sometimes, those brothers of his, but good-hearted." She brushed crumbs off the table and tossed them into the sink. "Shoot, just last week, 3 of those boys were over here helping Gus replace them boards on the porch that got eat up with termites, and they wouldn't take 1 penny. We sent them home with a burlap bag full of turnips, and they were happy as clams." Turnips? Any kids who were happy about a bag of turnips must be weird if you ask me. Bertha sat at the table beside me again. "So what else?" she said. "Tell me something else about school." I shrugged. I wasn't going to tell her about that getting to know you paper dropped onto Mrs. Willoughby's desk like a hot potato, or about Howard being my backpack buddy. So I just said, "Nothing." "Nothing?" "Nope." Bertha slapped her hand on the kitchen table. "I almost forgot," she said. "I got you something." She motioned for me to follow her down the hall to the tiny spare room where I'd been sleeping. "Ta-da!" She flung her arms out and grinned. I followed her gaze to the narrow bed in the corner. Propped up against the wall were 2 pillows in pink pillowcases with Cinderella on them. I realized this morning that this room don't look one bit like a little girl's room, Bertha said. So I went down to Big Lots and got those pillowcases. I was going to get the matching bedspread, but it was a double and not a twin. I might go back and get this fluffy pink rug they have if I can get Gus to help me move that bureau. And I know I need to get my canning jars out of here, and that old TV don't even work anymore. But she rambled on and on, but I didn't even listen. Cinderella pillowcases? She must think I'm 5 instead of almost 11. She sure didn't know much about kids. That afternoon, Jackie called from Raleigh. She told me how Carol Lee's cousin came to visit and gave her a cashmere sweater she didn't want anymore, and Carol Lee's daddy was teaching her how to drive since Scrappy never would. She said she was thinking about putting blue streaks into her hair and that some boy named Arlo was taking her to a NASCAR race down in Charlotte. She was so busy telling me about her happy life that she didn't even ask me what it was like living in Colby with hillbilly kids who eat squirrel. After we hung up, I went back to my room and laid on the Cinderella pillows and just felt sorry for myself. How could Jackie be so happy? It seemed like she didn't care one little bit about me anymore. I bet Scrappy didn't care about me anymore either. I bet he was so busy playing basketball behind the tall fence of the county jail that he didn't even think about me up here on this mountain in a house full of cats with these people I don't even know. And I knew for sure my mama wasn't thinking about me as she shuffled around the house in her bathrobe, all red-eyed and stoop-shouldered. I was definitely going to have to get on that porch tonight and wait for the first star to come out so I could make my wish again. Maybe 2 in one day would do the trick.